Currently, there are more than 460,000 student athletes participating in NCAA sports, and less than 2% of these athletes excel to the professional level, which is only about 9,200 student athletes in total. So the question we hope to answer here today is, what happens to the other 450,800 student athletes who don't excel to the professional level? And how can they be prepared by their respective colleges before being thrown into the real world? The fear of losing sports after college often becomes a reality for many student athletes. But often, this fear goes unchecked while these athletes are still attending college, making it increasingly difficult for them to come to terms with the end of their sports career. This seems to be even more prevalent among African American student athletes who tend to have an identity that is rooted in sports. Athletic identity greatly influences African American student athletes' academic success, as well as their career paths after their sports career. While African American student athletes are in college, they tend to have glamorous lifestyles for 4 years. However, when these good days are over, and they don't go on to become professional athletes, they have no idea what to do with their future because, in most cases, they have only been recognized for their sports contributions, which causes their academic successes to be stunted. According to one college athlete, many student athletes fall into being spoon-fed their college degree. Another problematic factor that increases the difficulty African American athletes face when pursuing careers other than sports are the stereotypical labels placed upon them. People treat African American athletes as if sports should be their only concern. For example, when Vince Carter attended his college graduation ceremony at the University of North Carolina, instead of playing in his NBA team's game, he received criticism from many people accusing him of not taking his role in the NBA seriously. Carter's education was more important to him. Therefore, he wasn't going to sacrifice his intelligence to please others, even if it left some fans and coaches disappointed. When African American athletes are unprepared for their future career due to these athletic identities, they have trouble finding jobs that are truly intellectual. This is evident especially when you look at former black student athletes. Many struggled when trying to find jobs in the intellectual sector of sports, such as management or head coaching positions. And even if they are able to get a head coaching position, black coaches are often considered to be only motivational, while white coaches are seen as intellectual. These stereotypical athletic identities that influence people's negative perceptions of African American athletes hinder their academic preparation and, in turn, make it hard for them to find intellectual job positions. One example of this would be Fred Butler, a former college football player who went undrafted and flunked out of college shortly after because he had little motivation to participate in classwork while he played sports. He possessed no real skills for employment, and the only recent information available about him is that he has a criminal record. Most cases of former African American athletes who don't make it professionally end up like Butler's. They become left behind and forgotten. On the other hand, there have also been many African American student athletes who prepared for a future path other than sports while in college, and were able to adjust to life after sports successfully, including Ellis Hobbs, Darius Walker, and Terrence Rencher. Ellis Hobbs became injured, but he was able to get his degree in radio and television communications, which allowed him to become a successful filmmaker and business owner. Darius Walker earned a marketing degree and through networking was able to start a career in broadcasting. He currently works as a private investment banker at Morgan Stanley in the wealth management department. Terrence Rencher, a former UT player, is currently an assistant coach at Texas State University. Also, former basketball superstar Shaquille O'Neal was able to earn his doctorate degree and now owns various successful businesses. So you may be asking, how can we make sure that current African American student athletes have the opportunity to become successful like Hobbs, Walker, and Rencher? Well, I have the answer. First off, administrators and coaches need to realize that student athletes are more than a marketing tool. These young adults need to be students first and athletes second, which sadly is often not the case. From the onset of their college career, these students should have the importance of a well-rounded college education put at the top of their agenda by coaches and advisors. Also, It should be mandatory that student athletes have a plan set in place at the beginning of their freshman year, detailing how to achieve a career outside of sport and in which field they plan to pursue. This, however, would require that all student athletes have the ability to choose their own major from whichever college within the university they chose. This is vital for these students to be successful after their sports career ends, and it is a highly important aspect of allowing student athletes to have a normal college experience. Likewise, these athletes should be reminded that while grades aren't everything, they are an important tool for getting accepted into campus organizations and when applying for internships, which are a vital part of getting a job after graduation. Student athletes are constantly practicing even during the off season. Coaches need to realize that this leaves little time for athletes to pursue career endeavors, making it nearly impossible for them to get a job after leaving college and quitting sports. Student athletes need to have the same opportunities as other students. They need to get breaks during their off seasons or summers where they can go and get valuable field experience in their chosen career outside of sports. In many majors, internships are mandatory to graduate, and it should be no different for student athletes. Lastly, according to a recent NCAA study, student athletes reportedly dedicate about 45 hours a week to their respective sport. While some of these hours are self-accumulated, a majority of them are mandatory hours required by the coaching staff. Even if a fraction of those 45 hours were dedicated to academics instead of sports, student athletes would see a significant rise in the level of effort they put into their schoolwork and studying, which would result in a significant rise in GPA, opening up a whole world of opportunities after graduation. Most importantly, however, is that African American children need to be shown early on that there is a whole world available to them outside of sports. They need to be educated about great African Americans such as Ronald McNair and Timothy Merrill George, and they need to be shown that there are thousands of careers open to them outside of being football players, basketball players, or entertainers. These may not be easy or popular solutions, but they are achievable. Every individual has the potential for greatness if they just dedicate enough time and effort to a specific craft. And African American student athletes need to be taught that they can be so much more than X's and O's in someone else's playbook.